Hello, my name's Patty.
I'm JT.
And welcome to our fucking podcast. We're talking about the glass ceiling.
Go read that definition. That fine definition you printed out 5 minutes ago.
Says the man with the fucking charts. So, the glass ceiling is an unfair system or set of attitudes that prevents some people, such as women or people of a certain race, from getting the most powerful jobs. Full definition being an intangible barrier within a hierarchy that prevents women or minorities from obtaining upper-level positions.
That's a myth.
How so?
All right, well, if we look at a lot of other sources, we'll find that women work less total hours than men. They're in the workforce for fewer years and avoid dangerous jobs that equate to higher salaries. Women compete less for positions. There's a study by debatewise.org, and they found that in the UK, for every 8 male politicians that were running for a candidacy, there's only 1 female politician. So it's very hard to say that women can't get into those positions when they're not even applying there for the most part.
But you also have to agree that part of it is societal. It's not all just laid on the women's job to go out for those jobs.
I disagree entirely. I mean, if you look at it, right, in a capitalist system like ours, if there's a woman who's just as qualified...
Well, we're not an entirely capitalist system.
Which is a problem, but in the general setting, right, a woman, right, if she's just as qualified as a man and they don't hire her, that company's bearing the opportunity cost. So there's an incentive to hire the best woman. And as you see, right, looking at trends, more women have been hired. They occupy a lot more higher positions, more prestigious jobs. I mean, the glass ceiling, if it ever existed, has been broken.
First of all, the glass ceiling did exist for a long time.
You're speaking in past tense. It's been broken.
It hasn't been broken, but you're saying if it ever existed, and it did exist, because there was a time when women weren't accepted in the workforce at all, and if a woman ever tried to get even a low position, she would be ridiculed. Because, for example, she would be seen as not as inappropriate because she didn't want to become a mother. Mm-hmm. And even now, it's as if, as a woman, you have 2 options. You can either follow your dreams and passions and get a good job and devote solely to your career, or you have a child. And as you said, because working fewer days for having a child. So if you're saying to women that, oh, it's your fault that you want to have a child, then how is that fair to anyone?
It's not necessarily a fault, it's that it's a choice. I mean, there are men who decide to be homemakers and stuff, but in our society, more women choose that instead. And you can't blame a business person for wanting to hire a man in that place. Do they
choose it, or is it not seen as acceptable for the man to even go into that type of field?
I mean, okay, I wouldn't say it's acceptable. I mean, looking at my family, my uncle, I've told you this story many times. He worked 3 jobs, put his wife through dentistry school, and now he lives like a king off his wife. His wife makes all the money. He sits at home, drinks cocktails all the time, smokes cigars, and has his nice car. Wakes up early, takes his kid to school, and then chills out all the time. I mean, men still do that.
Yes, but it's not the majority. It's not even, equal. It's a very few amount of people.
Well, and then again, it's their choice to do that. Most men, I mean, if you look at statistics, right, the Pew Research Center did a study, right, and they looked at careers with women and men and the wages they got, not the wages,
wages.
The earnings, right? The earnings they got between 1960 all the way to, I think, 2012, 2013. They found that earnings between 24 and 31 of men and women were pretty similar. It's when they start aging that it gets that the gap starts to increase and widen. And that's because more women decide to take time off to have children and things like that. Now, I'm not saying that women that don't have children can't reach those positions. They do. I'm just saying there's such a majority of women that do that practice of having a child and raising that child.
But the thing is that it's a rarity. It doesn't happen very often, and when it does, it's almost a spectacle to see. For women, it's, like I said before, it's a fork in the road. You have two choices. And from a woman's perspective, it seems as if I decide to go and follow my career and passion, that at some point I'm going to be stopped because I want to have a child. Yes. And is that fair because I want to be a mother, that they're like, okay, well, now that you want to be a mother, just deduct your pay?
Well, you see, here's the thing. There's nothing wrong with that fork. I mean, the complaint about the glass ceiling is that women can't, in general, reach those positions. They can, but there's certain life decisions they have to make, right? If I want to become obscenely rich, I might have to sacrifice some things, working a lot of hours and not spend more time with my family. You don't have to
sacrifice as much.
I would, if I want to become obscenely rich, I may have to. And the same thing with women, right? I'm not entitled to anything, just like you. I'm not going to give you a position if it's going to hurt my company. It's not sexist at all. It's economics. Looking at, again, I'm going to cite the Pew Research Center. 42% of mothers reduce work hours, as opposed to 28% fathers. 39% of mothers take a significant time off, whereas only 24% of fathers do that. 27% quit their jobs entirely.
But the amount of statistics that you have doesn't show the fact of what it actually means to be a mother. Because when you become a mother, it's, even in the 21st century, it's expected of you to take as much time off as you possibly can, whether it's paid or unpaid, to help raise your child. Mm-hmm. So it's either you take that time off, take that reduction in earnings, and raise your child and have a healthy relationship with your child, or you're seen as a heathen if you take your 3 weeks off that you may or may not get, paid or unpaid, and then go back to work and put the kid in daycare, nanny.
Well, that's why a lot of women who go to college...
So it's damned if they do, damned if they don't.
No, that's why a lot of women who go to college major in less lucrative majors. They do drama and theater art, studio art, things like that. Well, that's not the reason why. That is why. If they go over and they take time off, right? Let's say you do computer science.
Yes,
if you
that's
take
not,
5
that's
years
not
off
the same thing as saying, because they want to have children, we're going to choose a less demanding career.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. If I'm going to choose a career that I want to make a crap ton of money with, but it takes a lot of time and effort, I'm not going to be able to have a kid and manage that both of those. I'm probably not going to be able to manage that.
When you're following your passion, you're following your career, whether or not you're going to have a kid isn't going to be what you keep in mind.
The kid is such a major decision in life. Are you telling me you're not going to think about that?
Well, what I want to do with my life, I'm still going to do, whether or not I'm going to have a kid. And I want to have a kid, but just because I'm going to have a kid doesn't mean that I'm going to switch to fucking liberal arts. What I want to do is I want to work in environmental science. I want to work in environmental science and management. That's what I want to do. And I'm not going to be stopped by a kid. But just because I want to have a kid doesn't mean that just because I'm going to have a kid or now or in the future doesn't mean that I should get a reduction in pay or earnings if I want that. Because it's my choice if I'm going to have a kid. And even if I don't work as well, or if I work my butt off, it shouldn't be that just because I have a kid that should reflect how much I earn.
See what you're saying. But I want to clarify very quickly. The difference between pay and earnings is very simple. Pay is like what you get per hour, per certain amount of time, whereas earnings is like per year. So Patty may make $11 an hour. I may make $12 an hour. That's a $1 difference in pay. But let's say she works more than me. She can make more earnings. So she might make $45,000 a year. I might make $30,000 a year. I'm not good at math, so those numbers probably aren't right. But you get the gist, hopefully. Right?
Okay, so yes, in yearly earnings. But if I'm using me as an example,
Yeah.
I'm not going to say, oh, I really want to be in environmental science, I want to work in environmental management, but having a kid might make that a little bit difficult, so how about I just go into creative writing?
Well, I'm saying this, look at it this way. If you're a company, right? A company, its job is to make profit, right?
Yeah,
its
but
job
it's not it's about, okay, so deal with this question.
Yeah.
Do you think that women should have to choose between being paid equally and having a child?
I think it definitely should be considered a factor, right? Because it may be pay that might be different, right? They might be paid the same as a man, but they might, because of the fact that they have a child, they might work less. So I may make the same amount of money as a female counterpart, but I might get paid the same amount as a female counterpart. But if she decides to have a kid, she might choose to take time off, and that's going to contribute to different earnings. Now, she could maybe hire a nanny. She could maybe have her husband or her wife, depending on what kind of relationship that is, raise the kid.
Good job for the equality.
Yeah, man, equality.
One equality point.
See, libertarians, we got that equality side going. But she may take that time off for herself so she can raise her kid, right? And that's going to be a difference in earnings because she's going to work less hours, even if I make the same or less money than her per hour. You get what I'm saying in that point?
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but it's not that simple.
Really? Well, I want you to look at this question, right? A company's role, right? A company's main objective is to make profit, right?
Yes.
Okay, so a company's job, if it's focused on making profit, they're going to want to hire the most productive people they can.
But the woman could be just as productive as the man, or even more productive.
Great. But if she's more productive, they'll stay on the company, or they'll be valued, and they'll be paid that much. But if you're taking a lot of time off, you might not be productive. And let's look at STEM fields, right? There's a lot of women that dominate certain STEM fields, especially biology and veterinary sciences. Women dominate that, whereas in engineering, mathematics, it's more male-dominated. That's been just universal statistics that's proven.
Yeah, but a large part of that is because even though we've come very far, there's still a stigma in STEM fields that women can't do it.
No, women don't apply for those.
Yes, they do.
But women... Okay, let me rephrase that. Women do not primarily apply for those positions.
Yes, but you can't blame it on the women. You have to understand that there are societal standards that are involved.
So you're saying I should force women to do a major just because it's STEM?
I'm not saying to force anyone. I'm just saying you have to realize that you can't just look at the statistics in your fucking charts and just say, oh, this is this. There are more factors than just the corporations and earnings. You have to realize that there's societal pressures and, even growing up as a girl, you're kind of drilled from an early age that boys do science and math and they do like all of the computer things because they're capable of it, and that the girls are good at like languages and writing because it's
I agree with that.
Because it's more flowy and like you can put more like emotion and heart into it. But that's what you're drilled in from a very early age, and that's what a lot of guys don't understand is the fact that it's a part of how you grow up, and you can't blame a woman for how she was raised.
I mean, I actually want to come back to that in a later episode because the reason I believe that men and women or boys and girls are drilled that way is because we try to make it gender neutral when we teach in the classroom. And boys and girls have different minds. They think differently. Their thought process is completely different. And of course, sometimes they abhor one over the other.
So you're saying that boys and girls have different minds, so they specialize in different things. And because they specialize in different things, they don't go into the fields that could pay more.
You misunderstand me here. What I'm saying is that at a young age, right, even now, even at an old age, they still think differently. But when they're taught, if you're taught in a gender-neutral way, right, and you're given all these classes, you're taught gender-neutral, you're only going to choose the ones that you think are right. You look at schools in Australia. Some schools in Australia do separate boys and separate girls classes. And with the girls, they'll teach a certain part of physics. They'll start at a different point of physics. They won't start with mechanics. And what happens is a lot more girls go into physics majors. And with men, or with boys actually,
it's just tiny men walking around in little uniforms.
Oh man,
that's how it works.
Adorable!
Imagine if it was just like these tiny like men. They were like this big, and they had like little suits and ties, and they were just
tiny Ron
Swansons.
Tiny Ron Swansons.
That'd be adorable. Honestly,
I know. With Claymore mines to protect their property, it'd be amazing. Now back to my point.
This shit I have to deal with all the fucking time.
Now back to my point I was saying, right? With boys, they've realized there's a big problem getting them into writing fields. So they started switching up the kind of poetry or the kind of stories they'll have them read or absorb. So they might do more war stories, more action stories, something like that has a bit more action to it. And they find a lot more boys going into majors where there's writing now. And they've predominantly changed that because they don't teach gender neutrally, right? So we have to embrace the differences between men and women to reach equality, because if we try to teach the same, it's only going to divide us more.
I see what you're saying, but society is a lot more than school.
Oh, of course, but school's a big part of that. You have to understand. It's a huge factor in what we learn.
Yes, of course I understand it, but there are a lot of other influences that come into play when you're growing up and you're figuring out what you like, what you don't like. Like, for example, toys.
Yeah.
Gendered towards girls. They're very, of course, they're very pink. They're very, frilly and stuff like that. But a lot of them have to do with very,
playing house, femininity, that kind of things.
That, and also,
yeah,
the toys kind of take second roles. Like, they'll say that, she's, a veterinary doctor instead of, a doctor. Or they'll be, nurse instead of, doctor. Even though nurses are incredibly brave and they have an entire field of their own.
Mm-hmm. Well, women dominate that field. Women dominate the nursing field, and that's a very good field to go into. You get a lot more pay, you get a lot of union benefits.
Well, you don't get more pay as a nurse. Oh,
yeah, you get a lot of pay as a nurse. You're not going to make as much as a doctor, but you're going to make a lot of money. And the thing is with a doctor,
and so
you get sued a lot easier.
It comes from stereotypes that, so, for example,
I'm just bringing up
in an episode of How I Met Your Mother, there was an episode where Barney Stinson was talking about the sexiest fields throughout the ages. And one of them was the candy nurse, because it was seen that, the doctor was a man who wore the white lab coat and he carried the clipboard and he ordered what everyone else should do. Mm-hmm. But the candy nurse just wore this little-ass fucking dress with a tiny wimpy-ass apron and a fucking hat. That's not portraying a woman as taking her job seriously. It's portraying a woman as just there she is, doing a job. Look at her; she's so cute.
But you also have to understand that's a comedy show. That's satire. You look at actual nursing; they're wearing scrubs and they're covered in blood half the time.
There was a time when that was an actual thing.
Guess what? We're not in that time. We're talking about the glass ceiling now, not in the 40s. Now, okay? Now, looking at it, more women are college degree earners than men. More women go to college than men. And they're getting a lot more positions in the UK.
Yeah, and black women have the most degrees out of all of the categories that you could possibly have.
Yeah.
Black women are graduating the most. They're earning the most degrees. But, I mean, as a white woman...
Where are you sourcing that, though, just so I can know? Do you remember offhand where you sourced that from?
Offhand, I don't know, but if you ever start talking again, I will look it up and I will show you.
All right, so look it up and then we'll put it on the thingy below somewhere.
But if I can continue what I'm saying, they earn the most degrees, but as a white woman, I know that I will have more opportunities and I have more privilege, so I'm more likely to get those jobs and I'm more likely to earn more in yearly earnings. But we can't really speak about that because we're both incredibly white.
Yeah, but I don't feel that being white necessarily gives you the advantage because of the fact you're white. I feel that...
Are you serious?
Listen to me, because you're going to interrupt me if I don't say this a million fucking times, okay? All right? Statistically, we have a lot of minorities that live inner city, right? A lot more are living in inner city. And because of effects like slavery and segregation that happened before, right, there's not a lot of human capital in those demographics, okay? So they're still getting up there, okay? It's not because we're white that we're getting the advantage. It's not because of race. It's because of the fact that traditionally we have better education.
Yes, it is.
It's what?
It
no,
is
it's
about
not.
being white.
No.
You just said it's because... Okay, do you know why we get better education?
Go on, come on.
Because, okay, back in the 50s, when there was still segregation, there would be houses in the community that would say, no black people. Those communities had a school where all the white people went. Mm-hmm. All the white people that earned more than the black people, so more money, went to those white schools. Mm-hmm. More money in the white schools means more money for the teachers, more money to do activities, after school clubs, fucking hire better teachers, make sure that the kids are doing well, tutoring, making sure that they have all of the tools that they possibly need to succeed.
Yeah.
The community, African American communities and communities of other minorities, back in the 50s, didn't earn as much.
Yeah.
So the communities were poorer. The communities had a school. They had less money to give to the schools, which means the teachers weren't as great, not as much money for activities, tutoring, etc., etc. Yeah. While things have gotten better, things haven't drastically changed. You still see communities, even in New York City, where the communities themselves are still not at the same level economically as others, and because of the schools in those zones, they don't have enough money going to those schools, so the teachers won't be as great, they won't have enough money for tutoring, after school activities, and etc., etc. So we as white people get better education because we live in these predominantly white communities, or in New York City, if you earn more, you go into these neighborhoods that are predominantly white. Like, I lived in Cobble Hill for like 7 years. Cobble Hill is incredibly white and has really good public schools because of all the white people living together. That means more teachers are going to be more willing to work there. And the PTA, when they collect money, the parents are going to be like, okay, yes, let me give more money to the PTA so that they can fund after-school activities, they can help my kid with tutoring, they can help them make sure that they understand the material that they need to understand.
So let me question you on this then. By that logic, if, because we're white, we have that advantage, please explain to me why the predominant demographic at Brooklyn Tech, right over there, is Asians.
But I'm not talking about...
No. I'm using your logic here. I want you to tell me why it's not fully white by that logic then. Because
high schools aren't zones.
No, listen.
High schools, this is a specialized high school. Specialized high schools don't go by the same zoning laws.
Yeah.
Public schools go by zoning laws. If you live in a certain zone, you go to that public school. People move to certain neighborhoods so that they can get their kids in the best fucking public school that they possibly can.
Yep.
High schools don't follow that. Middle schools don't follow that, and high schools don't follow that. And also, on top of that, we're a specialized high school where you have to take a test to go in.
Yeah, and look at this. Who's studying more? Who's putting in more effort than that, right? If, by your definition, white people are getting into all the smarter schools, white people are getting better. Listen to me first.
I was talking about elementary schools.
I know. I'm saying that. If white people have the better middle schools, the better elementary schools, the better teachers, the better tutors, then they have a better basis, a better education, and should be passing those tests at a higher rate. But if you look at the Asian demographic, Asians predominantly study harder. They pay a lot more money in tutoring. They have a lot more businesses in tutoring. They do a lot more effort into education and get into those schools. It's not because they're Asian and just radically good at math. It's because they put in the effort to get there. That's why there's black people at tech. That's why there's white people at tech. That's why there's Asian people at tech. That's why there's Indian people at tech. That's why there's freaking weird everything at tech. But
your hair
it's
just
not.
did a weird
I know, my hair's super long. I need to get this cut short. But if your logic is true that because white people get into the better zone schools, they have a better advantage, then they should be getting into tech and Stuyvesant at higher rates. But tech and Stuyvesant are predominantly Asians. So you can't sit there and say that, they're getting all the best education at the young age, and that gives them all the advantage, because they don't, obviously.
I'm just talking about two classes, or not two classes, two races. Mm-hmm. White people, which I have experience in being, and black people, and I guess kind of Hispanics, because they fall into similar, not similar.
Demographics.
Not demographics, but while they live in different neighborhoods, it's too stressful. It's too stressful.
You gotta stay hydrated. I'm a lifeguard. Oh, God. I'm a lifeguard. Stay hydrated. Stay thirsty.
Shouldn't you not want them drinking water if they're in a pool? Because then wouldn't they not if they were
cramp. It's good because especially if they're outside, you don't want them dehydrating, you don't want them passing out.
I was talking about in a pool, if they were drinking the pool water.
Oh yeah, that has chlorine in it. You're gonna die. Well, you're not gonna die, but you're gonna have not a fun time.
Yeah, no one will have a fun time.
Trust me, I'm a lifeguard.
Okay, well, that got very heated.
Closing statement. JT's a sexist pig. Oh, sorry.
Closing statement. Pigs make bacon, and bacon is delicious.
Thank you for fucking watching our pilot episode.
I hope you really enjoyed it. I really hope you did.
Thank you to the mysterious men and women behind the camera.
No, how about it? Special thanks to men and women. Special thanks to the mysterious men and women behind the camera. Because they did awesome. Is it the man and the woman behind the camera?
No.
Okay.
Special thanks to the mysterious man and woman behind the camera.
Thank you, Patty, for picking it up where I put it down. Alright.
Except for